Good morning, everyone. I know a few of you mentioned to me that you were going to be jumping on here today, so I'll give a minute for everybody to kind of see that we're on live and get to us. I'm sorry for all the glariness. It's so hard in here to get to where these lights don't shine in y'all's face and my face and all around. If only I had a news booth, I could do this. So happy Friday. We are here to talk about DCM and about heart health in animals and the importance of some of what has gone on in the last couple of years with discussion about pets' heart health as it relates to diet and specifically the diagnosis of DCM. So I'll give you guys just another second to jump on and see. Here comes some more people. Okay. So, what we're here to talk about is DCM specifically, but also heart health and kind of how the pet's heart works and how amino acids are important to heart health. So, the first thing that I will say is that one of the necessary nutrients for heart health is called taurine, and it is an amino acid. Taurine is found in muscle meat most prominently. It's also in dairy and fish and some things like that. Um, Taurine, in and of itself, is an amino acid that is included in the muscle meat. Hey, Marty. Um, Cats need taurine. They need a very rich diet in taurine. Dogs need taurine too, but the unique thing about dogs is that dogs can synthesize taurine out of two other amino acids, cysteine and methionine, and those are two amino acids that can work together to can synthesize taurine in a dog's body. So here's how we kind of discovered, here's the path of how we kind of discovered that cats could not synthesize taurine from other amino acids. Back in the early 80s, the cats were dying of heart issues and developing heart issues and kind of dying suddenly. And they started to discover, as they started to do research, that the cats who were having the significant issue were cats indoors, being kept indoors only, and being fed a processed diet. And as they started to research this, they realized that cats needed added taurine. Cats who were indoor, outdoor, or outdoor only were not having this issue. And why is that? It's because they were sourcing their own taurine from prey that they were killing. So the unique thing about a mouse is that it has in its makeup 100% of the daily intake of what a cat needs for taurine to keep a healthy heart. So it's kind of like nature knows best, right? And so as they discovered this, they then started adding taurine into cat food, processed cat food, and discovered that they made the issue better. So then you fast forward to the early 90s, there was another study done about lamb and rice diets. Hi, Christine. There was another study done about lamb and rice diets, and um, it was kind of overstated that they thought lamb and rice diets were causing DCM. DCM is dilated cardiomyopathy, and it is not new. This is something it is a condition that has been here as long as animals have been here. So this is not a new problem. And there are breeds that are definitely prone to this. Larger breed dogs like Doberman Pinschers, those larger breed dogs with the big hearts that tend to suffer from heart issues. And so they started to connect, perhaps, maybe this lamb and rice diet was causing DCM. So they came out and said, if you have a larger breed dog, don't feed them lamb and rice. Well, that kind of came and went, and that data was debunked, and lamb and rice diets were no longer the villain. And then fast forward to 2019. Well, actually 2018, I should say. Around the winter of 2018, there was a study being done on some golden retrievers because golden retrievers were not previously prone to DCM, and they were starting to see a higher level of golden retrievers diagnosed with DCM, and they wanted to research why that might be. So, a vet set out to research this. Unfortunately, as we know now, her research study was plagued with some bias in that this particular researcher went to cardiologist, animal cardiologist, and said, if you are diagnosing pets with DCM, if they are being fed what's called a bag diet, a boutique diet, and they are diagnosed with DCM, please report them to me. She didn't say if you have a DCM candidate, report them to me. She specifically said, and they're being fed a bag diet. So she already gave her study a bias when she set conditions around that. So cardiologists started reporting DCM diagnosis, and the pet was being fed a diet that they were getting from a boutique, and our store qualifies as a boutique. And so she created her own research bias, and that's what she was asking for. And as she collected all this data, she went to the FDA and said, hey, look at all this data, all these dogs with DCM, and the one commonality for them is they're being fed a boutique diet. And so the FDA put out a warning and said, we're going to start researching this. We're not saying that this is the cause, but we're going to start looking into it. And that caused all kinds of alarm bells to go off, even though their initial warning really shouldn't have caused any kind of alarm bells. It did. And there was no evidence. And furthermore, there were a lot of bias involved, deep bias. So that kind of started this trend with vets to start recommending grain inclusive diets and start villainizing some brands and villainizing stores like ours that sell holistic pet foods, stating that our pet foods were causing or could potentially cause DCM. Let's talk about grain and how, if any, that has any kind of impact on the heart. So, right, we've already talked about the amino acid that's necessary for heart health is taurine. Taurine is not found in grain. And then I talked about the other two amino acids, methionine and cysteine. Methionine is found in dairy products similar to taurine. Now, cysteine is found in some whole grains, but without methionine, you're not going to get very far. You need both of those to synthesize taurine. So a whole grain diet, a pet food with whole grains in it, doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything for heart health. And so taking it a step further, we started to kind of look at the research, look at what data is out there. And we stated pretty clearly from the beginning, we didn't think it had anything to do with grain-free or grain inclusive. Said that from the beginning. I do really think that we have gotten into a trend with pet foods that we feed a very processed diet to our pets. Pet food in general, kibble, canned food, those are processed diets. In that, they're highly cooked. They have synthetic vitamins and minerals added to them. And there are good kibbles out there, but even a great kibble has a pretty high carbohydrate level. And when you talk about dogs and cats, grains are really not essential nutrients for a dog or a cat, but even less for a cat. Cats are obligate carnivores. They really shouldn't be eating any grains or carbohydrates. Dogs are carnivores, but they can tolerate grains. So I want to show you this little trick real quick. Let's see. We'll do it on this one first. So when you make a bag of kibble, you have to have carbohydrates to make this kibble. Carbohydrates are going to be grains, potatoes, pumpkin, legumes, tapioca, millet, sorghum. There are all different kinds of carbohydrates that you can use to bind the pet food together, but meat doesn't stick to itself. So if you are going to make a pet food and it's going to be a kibble, you have to add a source of carbohydrate or sources of carbohydrate. And there are some carbohydrates that are better than others. There are some carbohydrates that are lower glycemic. Their sugar index is lower. There are some that are much higher. Corn is one in particular. So most pet foods range somewhere between the 30% carbohydrate range. Some of the cheaper pet foods range up to 70% carbohydrates. 70% carbohydrates. Let me repeat that. 70% carbohydrates in some cheaper brand dog foods. Let me give you a really simple way to know how much of that pet food you're feeding your pet, how much of that is carbohydrates. So this is the guaranteed analysis. Let's see if I can do this. I put this light on to try to make it easier. You see that guaranteed analysis right there. I will read it to you. I must put on my reading glasses, but I will read it to you. So it's 26% crude protein. That's a minimum. 16% minimum crude fat. 6.5% max crude fiber. And 10% moisture. Okay? So what you can easily do, and I am going to link this page. Let me share this with you guys really quickly. Okay. Oh, stop popping up like that. Okay. So here is the page information that I'm using. It's from Dog Food Advisor. So this is how to estimate the carbohydrate content of any dog food. So if you go here, you're going to take, you see these numbers, protein, fat, fiber, and moisture, which is what I just read. And then you also have another number that we'll add in, which is ash. All foods contain ash. It's basically non-combustible material, mineral residue that remains after everything else. So you're going to take those numbers that I just read to you, which I'm going to add them up here, and then include the ash number. So we're going to take 26 plus 16 plus 6.5 plus 10 plus 8. So 66.5% is what you get, okay? And then you're going to take that 66.5% away from 100, and you get 33.5%. So this food is 33.5% carbohydrate level. So that's how you can figure out what pet food you are feeding and the carbohydrate level. You're going to find the highest carbohydrate amount in a kibble. I brought Stella and Chewy's freeze right over here so we could compare that as well, just so you guys can see. This again is the guaranteed analysis that I'm going to use. So you have a 38% plus 38% plus 5% plus 5%. Now I'm not going to add in ash because it hadn't been cooked. So that comes up to 86%, right? You minus 100, it's going to show you 14% carbohydrates. And in this, your carbohydrates are going to come from things like fruits and vegetables. You're going to have things like organic squash, organic spinach, pumpkin seed. You're going to find your carbohydrates in fruits and vegetables versus legumes, potatoes, those kind of things. So I challenge you to do that to what you feed your pets to see what kind of carbohydrate level you are feeding your pet. And if you know about Dog Food Advisor, here is another thing. Let me share this page. See if this will allow me to share this. me get this. Dang it. I've got to get it to a different tab. Share screen. We're going to do this. Okay. Now, this is on Dog Food Advisor. This is where I've gone to, dogfoodadvisor.com. And this is an article about dogs and carbohydrates. And what I think is interesting is that if you go back down here and you look at ancestral diets are diets for dogs prior to the creation of processed diets. Look at this number of carbohydrates they were eating. 14%. Look at the level now in dry dog food. The average, these are the average levels. Look at that difference. And we all certainly know what carbohydrates do and can do. They turn into sugar, and we know what sugars do in our body. And an overload of sugar is not good for anybody. Well, look at the difference in that right there. That speaks volumes. Look how high that fat number is. So we always, as humans, villainize the fat, right? The fat level, we've greatly reduced the fat level, but yet we have increased the obesity level of our animals probably exponentially. I mean, I can't even tell you what percentage, but huge percentages. And so, right, this tells us that it's not the fat that's making our pets sick, right? And it's not the protein that's making our pets sick. What could possibly be making our pets obese? Carbohydrates. We're feeding them processed diets that are really high in carbohydrates. Christine is asking, can you use Dog Food Advisor for cat food? I believe so, Christine. I'm going to check real quick and make sure. So hang on just a second. I'm going to look and see if they have any cat on here. Hang on just a second. I'm looking. Okay, no, all on here is dry dog. But I will refer you to another website. Let me share this one with you guys. And I will, Christine, I'll also look and see if I can't find another website like Dog Food Advisor. But this one in particular is a really great site. So this is truthaboutpetfood.com. And this website is run by Susan Thixton. And Susan's a big advocate for transparency and pet food. And she does have, if you go scroll down to the bottom and you go to the list, you can get her list of pet foods that she recommends and you can order it. Now, there is, you have to pay for her list. But this tells you about her official list and how much it is. I don't think it's that expensive. The list that she puts out, I want to say it's like $10 or something like that, but it's not that expensive. So I highly recommend, if you really want to double check the food that you're feeding, let's see, we'll go here. Yeah, it's just $10. You just are basically making a donation. So it's $10 to that list. I'm going to copy and paste this link for you. This is that website. There you go. So when you scroll down to the bottom of the Truth About Pet Food, this is where you can click to get the list and get the list of foods that Susan Thixton finds the most transparent. She also is a great resource for ingredient definitions, news, recalls. She has all kinds of great recalls in here. And here's what I find interesting. Right. So if you look at this right here of these recalls, you have Royal Canin, renal support, which is a prescriptive diet. You have Purina Pet Care, um, their Pro Plan veterinary diets, also prescription recall. And this is for vitamin D. You also have here an indoor complete dry cat food made by Heb Texas Pets. This is going to be a pet food that is more widely available. I'm not sure what that recall was about. This is a labeling error again for prescriptive diet. Okay, so of these 5 recalls, 3 of them are prescription diets. Oh, I guess you guys can't see that. Maybe you can't see that. Let's see if you can see this. Yeah, you can see that. Look at that. Of the 5 recalls listed, 3 of them are prescription diets. Okay. And one of the biggest issues with that, with the prescription diets, is that generally a pet who's on a prescription diet is not having a rotation in their diet. So they're not rotating from bag to bag, protein to protein, which is what we recommend here. And so they are consistently eating that food. Vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. So you can overdose on that. We can overdose on that. And it can cause major organ failure. So when you have a pet that's eating a prescription diet and that's all they're eating, and they're eating that day in and day out, and they're getting all this excess vitamin D, it is extremely dangerous. And unfortunately, by the time you do damage to both the liver and the kidneys, they really don't start reporting the damage. They don't create the damage until there's a lot of damage done. You don't start seeing symptoms until there's significant damage, because they're working really hard to try to not damage. And so usually with kidneys, you're not going to pop those values until they're like 75% damaged. So those kind of recalls are huge, especially for prescription diets, because people are feeding them in and out. These are the number one reasons that we recommend rotating proteins and rotating the foods that you feed, so that if there is an inconsistency in the food, if there is a vitamin inconsistency, because it can happen to any processed diet, you're not going to be feeding that to your pet consistently. And so your pet's going to have exposure to other things and not be exposed to too much vitamin D like that. So very dangerous stuff. But anyway, getting back onto the thread of heart health and DCM. So DCM, this big ruckus, was created in 2019. I am going to tell you that to this point, billions upon billions, maybe even the trillions, who knows, but billions of dollars literally have been spent trying to prove that grain-free diets are to blame for an increase in DCM. Billions of dollars. Foods that we sell have been researching it. Big companies have been researching it, like your Purina, your big 3, Purina, Mars, and Hills, and nobody can find a link. Nobody can find a direct link to pet food causing DCM. What they can find is that DCM is a multifaceted issue, and that generally when you have a pet who is diagnosed with DCM, you go to the vet says, oh, you're feeding a grain-free diet. You need to switch to a whole grain diet. We're going to put your dog on all these medications, and we're going to retest in 6 months. And your pet comes back and they say, oh, your pet's so much better. You switched the diet and that's what made it better. Well, we've left out that we put the pet on all these medications too and started doing therapeutics. It wasn't the diet that necessarily caused the improvement. None of that was getting considered. So the FDA came out in January. It's been kind of quiet, amazingly, but they came out and said that they were going to stop researching this issue. There has been no link found, no longer researching the issue, and they do not think that a cause is out there. They found that the times that they were having increase in reporting of DCM was correlated with their announcements. Every time they went to the media and said anything about DCM, suddenly they had a surge in diagnosis being reported to the FDA. So, they began to see it was them being more vocal about it that was causing the increase in the reporting, and not necessarily any kind of diet relation. So, we have said all along we do not believe that DCM is related to grain free diets. DCM, as FDA has now said, is a multifaceted issue and can be genetic in nature. Um, it can certainly be environmental in nature. And can what you feed contribute? Potentially, but it's not the single factor, nor are whole grains going to help the issue. What we've said all along is we feel that meat rotation is important. So if you're feeding chicken this time, you should feed beef next time. You should feed lamb next time. You should feed fish next time. You should rotate through proteins. This is going to give your pet maximum exposure to amino acids and to a more complete amino acid profile. It will also give them variety, and we all know that our diet needs variety. They are no different. What we feel like here, the best diet you can feed your pet has some fresh food included. Um, it can be expensive to feed and cost prohibitive, especially if you have giant Great Pyrenees or Great Danes. If you're having really large breed dogs, it can be really hard to feed them a raw diet. We think raw diets are the premier diet for pets, but there are a lot of in-betweens on that. And if what you can afford to feed your pet is a kibble diet, feeding them a low carbohydrate food, and again, I've just taught you how to estimate the carbohydrates in your pet food, feeding them a low carbohydrate pet food where you also offer some fresh foods, fresh or raw. So you can simply add in some freeze-dried raw, rehydrate these little nuggets with some bone broth or goat milk, and top your kibble with this. This is a less processed diet than your kibble component. Or cook some fresh vegetables, add some fresh fruits into your pet's diet. These are things that your pet will thrive on. The more fresh you offer them, the better. So if what you can afford as a baseline is a great kibble that's low carbohydrate, and then complementing that with some fresh components, that is a great start to good health for your pet. So I'm here for questions. I mostly wanted to give this update because some of you have been asking for the update, and unfortunately it came out so quietly people didn't even notice it. I will get the actual link to the FDA. I will get that for you. Here is your latest. It came out at the end of December. So here's the link to the FDA website where they say they're ceasing any kind of continued investigation. So they show where reports kind of spiked and all that kind of stuff. And you guys can go there and read all about it. But it really was more the newsworthy stories were causing a spike in reporting. It wasn't necessarily that there was a spike in cases. So I'm here to answer your questions. I'm here to help you with whatever resources that you need. We certainly choose the dry pet food that we stock and sell pretty carefully. When we bring it in, we decide kind of the quality control we want to see companies have. And when we feel like their quality control is going in the toilet, that's kind of where we put their pet food. I will say this lastly about cats. Dogs can tolerate some level of carbohydrates, so the kibble in the kibble form in a dog's diet, a dog can tolerate as long as it's a low carbohydrate threshold. Cats absolutely should not have carbohydrates, and cat kibble does have carbohydrate. Again, meat doesn't stick to meat, so you have to have some level of carbohydrate in that kibble. So we really, for cats, preach wet food diets or a raw diet. Those are your two preferences for diets in cats. About 85% of our domesticated cats die from renal failure. It's because they don't have enough moisture in their diet when we are feeding them dry kibble. Cats by nature don't want to drink water. And so we put salt, iodine, in their dry food to encourage them to go drink water because they need that water for the digestion process. And that salt that we add to the dry food, of course, we've taken the moisture out of the food, put salt in it so that the animal will then go seek moisture to put it back in their body. But digestion takes moisture from the rest of the body. So um, the moisture with their diet is best. You want wet food or raw food. That being said, cats, if you've ever heard my little spiel, cats are imprint feeders. So cats really want to eat what they're used to eating. And it's hard to transition them to a raw diet or to a canned diet if they're used to eating kibble because they're addicted to that carbohydrate. So it can be really hard. You have to work at it. It can take months to get them transitioned, but it is for the betterment of their health that you do want to switch them over to a moisture-rich diet and get the carbohydrates out of their diet. So I'm here for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to post a comment. I really just wanted to get this information out there to you guys since there was an update and we haven't really talked a whole lot about that update. And unfortunately, I don't feel like there's been enough recognition to the update that there was to the initial alarm bells being sounded. The update should be just as loud, if not louder, than the initial alarm bells, since the alarm bells were a false alarm. So feel free to ask questions. I'm here for any questions you may have. Christine, I will find a cat food advisor website for you, similar to dog food advisor. So let me know if you got any questions. I'll hang here for a second. While I'm hanging here, waiting on any questions, I will let you guys know that next week we have our workshop with West & Co. over at the Sedgefield location. These have been so much fun. I'm really looking forward to this one. We're going to make art, wall art for the pet parent. So like fur mom or fur dad, or we're a furry family or something like that. West & Co. has all kinds of cute options. That will be next on the 22nd. I think that's next Wednesday over at the Sedgefield location. And so we're going to be over there from 6 to 8. Okay, Heart to Heart is wanting me to explain what an imprint feeder is. Okay, here is an imprint feeder, and this is for cats. Dogs are not this way. Cats are imprint feeders in that what they get when they are young is imprinted upon them, and that's what they grow up kind of knowing to eat. And so if you take it away from them, they will literally starve themselves without it a lot of times. I'm not saying this fits every cat, but the majority of cats as a species are imprint feeders. The other real interesting thing about cats is their tongue memorizes the shape of the kibble that you feed. So some more popular larger brand pet foods out there have patents on the shape of their cat food. So, you know, some cat foods out there have a real specific shape, and that's because their cat becomes addicted to the shape of the food. So that if they try to feed them anything else, they won't eat it because it's not that same shape. So those are kind of some of the things about cats. If cats have dentals and lose a tooth, sometimes they'll go off their food because the food doesn't have the same shape to their tongue because they've lost a tooth. So that is, in a nutshell, what an imprint feeder is. Basically, what they get as a young kitten is what they then grow up knowing, and it imprints on them. And so that's what they're looking to eat long term. And like I said, it doesn't help that they get addicted to the carbohydrate and sugar component in a dry formulation. They get very addicted to that. And it's hard to get them off the kibble. It's kind of hard to get them off that sauce. Once they're on it, a lot of cats, if they don't see enough dry food in their bowl, they'll go and stand at the bowl and harass you for more. That's all a sign of that addiction, for sure. So hopefully that answered your question. There is a species of cats, I want to say it was like a desert species of cats that can drink salt water and completely rehydrate their body because their kidneys are so highly defined that the kidneys can separate the salt from the water, which is pretty cool. Cats really in nature wouldn't go seek a water fountain to drink out. The only reason our domesticated cats do that is because of the additives we put in their food to make them do that. Their tongue really, they cannot rehydrate their tongue using their tongue, because if you've ever looked at a cat's tongue, it doesn't cup like a dog's tongue, and it's so rough. So when they stand and drink water at a water fountain, even if they did that all day long, a cat fed exclusively dry food is never going to be able to properly rehydrate their body. They will become chronically dehydrated by the time they're 10 years old. Well, hopefully that answers y'all's questions. Like I said, I'm here to answer questions. My staff is here to answer questions. We do a lot of training. In fact, right now in the spring is when we really concentrate on training and pet food education. So you should be able to come in and ask all of the questions you need answered to our staff. If they can't answer it, I can, or I'll find you the answer if I can't answer it. But we do spend a lot of time reading about these things, learning about these things, because it's very important to us. Oftentimes people want to know what and how I feed my pets. They'll say they are fed a raw food diet and have been for 8+ years. We've been feeding a raw food diet, and it's amazing the difference. It's funny, I went from feeding a more commercially fed brand prior to being here, and then kind of started here and started shopping here and started buying a high quality kibble. And the difference for that step up was huge. I saw a lot less random diarrhea, a lot less vomiting, a lot of less just crazy random issues. Their health was a lot more consistent. And then when I stepped up to a raw feeding diet, it became even more consistent. And I noticed my pets being healthier overall for a lot longer. So I really believe in the power of a raw pet food diet. Some of what the concern that I know some sides have about raw pet food is bacteria. And this is interesting. I will share this with you guys really quickly, just because it is a pretty interesting thing that has just recently happened. Let me show you. Let me share with this page. So in the Super Bowl, how many of you saw that really like heart-tugging commercial with the Labrador Retriever? I'm sure you did, Miss Marty, but talking about this Labrador Retriever, and it's this little girl growing up with her lab, and then it kind of cuts to a scene of her laying in the bed, pregnant with her husband and her senior lab, and talking about being with your pet forever. Well, there was some interesting conversation on some boards that I'm in. There was a rant on some social media about these types of dog foods. That was not for a dog food that we carry, but we carry very similar products, but it's for the farmer's dog, which is a gently cooked diet, which we carry gently cooked diets. But the interesting thing about this commercial or about this rant, is this person's problem with these kind of diets was bacteria, and talking about them having bacteria issues. Right here, I think this is very interesting. Those are very interesting numbers. Unfortunately, they're kind of old numbers. They're from 2012. But this person said that there should have been a warning label on that commercial stating that those foods are more prone to bacteria. And the reality is they're not. And many kibbles are recalled for pathogens each year. And those kind of warning labels don't exist on pet food, on kibble, dry packaged pet food. So, and I can go down a whole nother rabbit hole of that, and how pets handle bacteria so much more differently than we do. They're much shorter intestines. They have 4 times the stomach acid. Their body is prepared to battle and handle bacteria far better than we ever could. I mean, they are built to eat things that literally are crawling with maggots, which I know sounds disgusting, but they really are built to do those kind of things. Their body is built to not absorb those kind of pathogens. Not excusing bacteria in anything, bad bacteria in anything, but pets really are not affected by these pathogenic bacteria. So just some interesting health food conversation happening out there in real time over commercial. But these types of dog food, in my mind, are one of the healthier ways to feed your pet, because you're giving them access to fresh whole foods, which is pretty huge. So if you want to know more about the gently cooked options that we have here, or the raw diets, we'd be happy to talk to you. And don't feel like because you can't afford to feed all raw or all gently cooked, doesn't mean you can't add those components into the kibble that you already use. Topping your pet food offers them access to some of those fresh diets, while also giving them a good basis and giving yourself a little bit of savings in the pocketbook. So just don't think that just because you can't afford all, it doesn't mean you have to go with 9. Yeah, that's great. Christine was saying she adds water to her cat's wet food, about 2 tablespoons. And Christine, you can also add bone broth, another great way to add moisture into your pet's diet. And this month, our subscription box is full of tons of bone broth for cats and dogs. So a great way to add moisture to your pet's diet and give them some additional nutrition like glucosamine and chondroitin that comes great in bone broth. Okay, guys. Well, there you go. We made it through. Hopefully that answers your questions. If you have more questions, feel free to just pop them in the comments. I will keep an eye on the comments on our page. And if you need more in-depth information, don't hesitate to ask us. We're here for that. And your pets mean the most to us. Your pets are pets. Pets here mean the most. We know that. And that's why we want to do the best for them. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. We look forward to seeing you next week.